So I'd like to talk about the sun a little bit, I guess, now. Sun on flat Earth. I kind of see that as something that actually comes up from the ground. Just a hot lava bubble coming up through maybe the North Pole, coming up, finding itself in the plane it's in now. Just kind of just like a bubble, rises to wherever it fits. So it's got a little bit of mass on it, doesn't go too high, doesn't sit too low, so that it's lighter than the air we're in. One of the things that I relate it to is the mythical bird, the phoenix. Mythical bird that lives for a very long time. When it dies, it's a rebirth. So when it dies, it's actually rising from its own ashes, kind of thing, you know. So I'm thinking, you know, just think of an ice sheet, and something underneath our feet happens, a magnetic pole, field, whatever, probably a vortex, you know, of molten metals or irons or whatever. I'm not talking about the core of the earth, but I am talking about gases and things of that nature that if they're trapped under pressure, they are going to rise to the top. So that's how I kind of think the sun works. You know, it was lighter than what was under our feet, obviously, and it's lighter than the air we're standing in, so it came up like a bubble, burnt its way through, found its critical mass, and now rotates on its magnetic umbilical around in a circle, which creates our home. Maybe in the beginning it was a water world, you know, it came up through the ice sheet, the lava, whatever's the lowest of the low down there, just a combusted, you know, lava heat and all that kind of. I don't know, but I kind of believe that it would have come up from below our feet and rose to where it's currently at, you know, at critical mass. So now it's just tethered and spinning. If it could, it'd fly, it'd just float away. But the epicenter has it under control, and I kind of think that's what those borealis lights are. You know, up at the North Pole, the northern lights. It's sort of the leftovers of the sun when it came up through, and still has, you know, a grasp on it. So, and the moon, you know, the more and more I think about the moon, I also think that it's just an old dead sun. It still has lift, which means it still has whatever chemical reaction to keep it floating up in its plane. It may be feeding off the sun. Now, the sun may be enough to keep it heated, like a hot air balloon, and, you know, it's collecting that sun, keeping the interior of the moon heated enough to stay afloat. But I do believe eventually what goes up comes down. So one of the things I was talking about in a previous video was that the land that we're standing on may have been previous suns, you know. So a sun dies, if it, you know, it may be maybe the moon is feeding or kind of parasitical off of the sun, whereas it's collecting the heat enough to keep it still afloat. And if the sun were to be, if it weren't getting the heat from the sun, then it would slowly start to come down, spiraling towards the center, which again would, you know, crash into what we currently have as land, and come folding down, busting up, cracking apart, making new, what we call flat or new fault lines in our crust, and sea levels will go up. We've got more weight pressing down on the water. There's more land available, and so on and so forth. It would just be a cycle. So maybe, and I kind of look at when you look at the map, it kind of looks like there was maybe 7 suns, and we're in the 7th sun right now. And the 6th sun was the moon, but it hasn't come down yet. If you look at the map, it looks like there's been 5, and they're all vortexed in a way where if the way the sun goes around hasn't changed. So he's going to go around, clockwise. So when it's coming around and then it falls and starts to shatter and break apart and bust up on top of the land, you can see how these mountains were made. So it's just the edge line of its deterioration. A mountain is the edge line of the last particle of the smashed up sun coming down. It definitely explains islands. I mean, when a sun would come up, it means that there would still be something dripping down, because you would still have some of that solid mass hitting the air, and as it's falling in chunks, huge chunks, coming down and falling into the ocean, and then hardening up. So I mean, that's how I kind of look at this, and a lot. You could picture it however you want. God made the sun. He formed it, he put it there, and gave it to us. But I'm looking at it scientifically, and if we're on a flat world, this didn't come from above and just sit this low. It came from below to sit that high. So yeah, it found it. Both items had found critical mass in the planes above, and they are just doing their thing, man. They're living their life. It's the phoenix, and it's got a long life to live. So that's just how I kind of view the sun taking form, taking shape, and finding its way to give life to everything that we know. Whether it was drawn up through the ground by God, maybe. But it's definitely, it's not something that dropped. It's something that rose. It rose up to where it is. And eventually, if it burns out, if it stops burning, it loses its combustion and its heat and dies, and another sun doesn't come up, then, it's going to come down and make more land. Of course, that is detrimental to everybody and everything living on the planet, but that's what a phoenix is. It's the death and then rebirth of something new. So unfortunately, if this is the truth, this may be the reason why we're told we're spinning on a ball around the sun. Okay? But it's kind of the same theory, because if you ask me, gravity would be sucking us into the sun every year. We're closer and closer to being sucked into the sun. This aspect is the opposite. It's every year that the sun burns off its chemistry, it's dropping lower and lower down onto us. So everything is pretty much, you don't have to forget everything you're taught. You just have to look at it at a new perspective. So if they say we're going around the sun's going around us. If we're falling into the sun through gravity, then the sun is falling down on Earth through fluid dynamics. It's just becoming heavier. I can't say too much about that. That's about where my mindset is on it. I think that's how it works.